Good evening. And welcome to our second Yuz pod on creativity, play, and cultivating practice in daily life. The form for this evening is going to be me talking for a bit, and actually us sitting and then me talking. And then you guys will log in to Hangout and discuss together, explore together, and I'll explain more about how to do that later on. So, how about we sit for some time together? We'll probably sit for about 20 minutes. So, making sure you're in a place where you can sit for 20 minutes and not be disturbed. And then, finding a position that's vaguely comfortable, feeling the contact with the ground. And then allowing the eyes either to close fully or close partially with a soft focus looking towards the floor. Maybe taking a few deep breaths, breathing in and out, and in and out, just allowing the day to be what it's been, breathing in and out, just allowing ourselves to settle here. Feeling the contact with the ground, and seeing if we can balance the quality of uprightness with the quality of relaxation, bringing alertness and also softness both to the body and the mind. And sometimes it helps with the uprightness to imagine a thread coming out of the top of the head, just drawing the head up towards the sky and allowing the head to rest lightly on the neck and the shoulders. And feeling the shoulders softening, being drawn down towards the earth. Feeling the spine rising upwards. Maybe rocking gently from one side on the left to the right, and back again to the left. And just seeing if we can find that place of uprightness. And then forwards and back. And forwards and back. Again, finding that place of uprightness, neither leaning forwards nor backwards. And relaxing the back of the head. Feeling the top of the head soften. Down into the forehead. Feeling it being drawn towards the earth. Feeling the weight of the cheeks. Allowing the mouth to soften. relaxing the gums around the teeth. And then feeling the jaw soften. Running all the way back into where the muscles hold the jaw into the rest of the skull. Just allowing those to soften and relax. Softening around the ears. And then relaxing around the eyes and deep in behind the eyes. And as we sit together today, it's bringing a spirit of generosity to our practice. Seeing if we can welcome whatever is here right now. It could be sensations in the body, it could be emotions, it could be thoughts. Just whatever is here, just bringing a spirit of generosity and welcoming. And allowing attention to settle with the breath. Wherever we feel that most clearly. It could be in the belly, rising and falling, in the chest, expanding and contracting, or at the nostrils, sensation of the air flowing in and out. Just wherever you feel that most clearly, allowing that to be the area, the focus of awareness of the breath. And when we become aware, the mind is not on the breath. It's relaxing completely and allowing attention to settle again with the sensations of breath. And when we become aware the mind has wandered, just allowing attention to settle with the breath. wherever we find the mind, welcoming where it is, welcoming the remembering, and relaxing completely, and allowing attention to settle with the breath. Again and again, welcoming and allowing attention to settle with the breath. wherever we find the mind, welcoming, relaxing completely, and allowing attention to settle with the breath for the last few minutes of our sit together. What is it to bring generosity to sitting here right now? Feel free to stretch out. Stretch out your legs. So I wonder how the week working with pausing was. I wonder how that practice of pause came up in your life, and how it impacted your experience. Both in cultivating a more regular sitting practice, and also in moments throughout the day, and also in specific actions: brushing teeth, leaving the house, coming back to the house, getting on the bus, whatever the chosen place or area was for you. So you may remember our little sequence that we're exploring during this series of pods: pausing, care and love, relax, play, create, or creation. So last week was pause. This week we're going to look at care and love. And actually there are a number of different aspects of care and love. And the one we're going to look at today is generosity. Generosity. It's interesting, generosity has a Latin root, genosis, and that means of noble birth or of noble descent. Genna is kin, clan, race or stock. So of noble birth. And in the English language, and also in French, it was up until the 17th century, it was used as the word was used to denote of generous birth, or of noble birth, Generous meant of noble birth, or of high birth. And then around the 17th century, it began to shift into being used in the sense of noble spirit. So it wasn't just a hereditary thing; it was a quality of noble spirit. And then from about the end of the 17th century on, and particularly into the 18th and 19th century, it then began to be used to express, or as a description of what people of noble spirit, how they act in the world. And so the more familiar usage of generous that we're, in the English language, that we're familiar with, generous, to give, to be kind, to be generous. A good friend of mine was in an extraordinary relationship. She was married and was in her late 50s, and she'd been married for, I think, around 8 years to her partner. And one day he was a super fit athlete, triathlete. And one day he was cycling and he died very suddenly of a heart attack. And my friend was devastated. The love of her life had died. And that night she had fitful sleep, and she woke up in the morning, and lying on her couch was her best friend who lived in Japan. And the best friend, she called her best friend and let her know that her husband had died. And the best friend had bought a ticket and got on a flight. And so when she woke up in the morning, the best friend was lying on the couch asleep, pretty jet-lagged. And when I heard that story, I was like, oh, such generosity. What an amazing expression of generosity that is. Just to drop everything and go and support a friend in need. And yeah, there are a few qualities, or generosity is one of the few qualities that I really value and that really, really have struck me in my life when I've received generosity. There's something very particular about the quality, and I can remember very warmly both specific examples of generosity and also people who had a quality or an air or a tangible sense of the generosity, not just with the way that they're acting in terms of, oh, I'm going to give you money, or I'm going to give you food, or I'm going to give you my time, but just the way that they are in the world, the way they are with their own experience, and the way they are with me or with other people. And one of the people that springs to mind that struck me early on in my life, when I was about 14 in England, my mother organised a series of conferences for part of the Oxford University conference series, or lectures. And one of the lectures was given by Desmond Tutu, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And we had tea with him before he gave the lecture, my mother, Desmond Tutu, and myself. And I remember being profoundly struck by this man who was very human, very wise, but profoundly generous with the precocious, shy, that strange combination of precocious and shyness that 14-year-olds seem to be able to manifest, and I seem to be able to manifest. Yeah, I remember being really touched by, oh, what a human being. What an amazing human being. And yeah, he'd done extraordinary things in South Africa, particularly with the peace and reconciliation process and with the ending of apartheid. But here was this man who was incredibly generous. So, invitation this week is to explore generosity. Explore generosity. And remembering the invitation here isn't to become generous, although that could be great, but more to explore our relationship with generosity, both in terms of what it brings up in us when we receive it, but particularly what it brings up either when we try to give it or as we give it. And there are a couple of different two main areas I want to look at. The first is I guess we could call it like conventional generosity or tangible generosity, and that is the quality of giving in a tangible form. So that could be giving one's time, could be giving money to someone, could be giving food, could be giving attention, but it's the quality of generosity of spirit, but also enacting generosity. And if you just maybe close the eyes for a moment and just bring to mind a time where you received someone else's generosity. Could be when you were having a rough time and someone gave you support. Could be when someone gave you a leg up, a help up, a hand up, either at work, at school, when you're studying, or a friend, just like, helped you out in some way. And just bring to mind and experience what that felt like, what the situation was, and what it felt like to receive that. And then also bring to mind a time when you were generous. An action, some way that you engaged with someone or with the world that had generosity in it. It could be something very simple. Doing the dishes for someone, cooking someone food, helping someone out, listening when someone is having a rough time. Giving someone some clear and precise feedback. Just whatever it is, just bringing to mind the quality of what it felt like to be generous. You can open the eyes. Another piece of generosity is actually sometimes there's some resistance to actually wanting to be generous. Like, I have an idea that it would be good for me to share this cookie with someone, but I kind of don't want to. I actually want to keep this for myself. And feeling into the tension around, is there going to be enough? Cookie, it's kind of easy. But time, love, money, if I give this away, if I'm generous with this, is there going to be enough left? My Zen teacher, Reb, someone asked him, what is so good about being good? Like, I know it's kind of conventionally good to be good, and in spiritual terms, being good seems to be highly valued, but what's so... like, what's really the kernel? Like, what's the central piece? What does that bring up in a spiritual sense? And he said one of the things it brings up is it reveals how much we may not want to do that. It reveals the intention to be generous can reveal when we don't want to be generous, when we want to hoard, when we want to hold on to, we want to grasp at things grasp at our life. So as we explore generosity this week, a real invitation not to, the intention isn't necessarily to become generous, but it's more to study. In fact, it's almost more rich to study the places where we don't feel generous. Like, what is it to not want to be generous to someone and also to ourselves? Another quality of generosity, which is interesting, is, do I want to be noticed for being generous? Like that, like, am I giving to you so that you'll go, oh, Simon, that was so great? Or so that I'm, oh, do you see what I'm giving them? Do you see what I'm giving them? Like, what's the motivation behind the generosity? And again, being careful with the judgment, with the harshness towards ourselves, but being curious, like, what are the different motivations that fuel or bring generosity up? And then with those different motivations, does the generosity feel different? Like, is there a different quality when it's just like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do the dishes? Or is it like, oh, I'm going to do the dishes so that you will see what a great person I am? Because I am a great person. I'm actually quite a lot greater than you, who always leave them in the sink. Like, oh yeah, Like, there's me over here, who's kind of pretty good, and there's someone else over there who is not so good. Like, just watching that, the way that we can use generosity can be co-opted into defining a sense of self that is slightly better than everyone else, or maybe just that person. So yeah, during this week ahead, as we play with generosity, looking at the different aspects of it, the qualities of motivation, and then the way that motivation then tinges the act of generosity in different ways, or flavors it in different ways. Another piece of generosity is that it doesn't necessarily need to be so kind of obvious. I remember when I was living in India for a while, I'd just come out of retreat in Bodh Gaya, and I was with a friend, Phil, and we went to Gaya station, and we'd been in retreat, I think, for something like 3 weeks, a silent meditation retreat, and it's a little spacey and on the Indian platform, and but Phil he spoke pretty good Hindi and had been in India longer than I had, so I felt pretty kind of relaxed, and we were catching a train to Delhi, and we were on the platform and had our tickets, and heard on the tannoy something about Delhi. Calcutta train was platform 6, and we were on platform 4, so okay, so we went up over the bridge down onto platform 6. The train pulled in, we got on, we found our seats, and as normal there were a bunch of people sitting there were these kind of benches, and there were meant to be 3 people on them, and there were 4 people on them, and then we were like, oh, I think these are the seats that we have, and we kind of squeezed in, and they were, the people who were there were kind of like, really? We have this, and we were like, oh, well, it's probably the wrong carriage or something, and we looked, and it was S4, seats 67 and 68, and it's like, huh. And they got out their ticket and looked, and they also had S4, 60, the same numbers, and I was like, wow. And I said, well, it's probably an error, ticketing error in the system. And they were like, no, it's computerized. It's not. There's not going to be an error. And I was like, well, it's probably just a mistake. But we'll wait until the conductor comes, and we can sort it out. And they were really puzzled. They were like, no, computers. It's not. It's Indian railway computer system just doesn't make mistakes. It's not a problem. And I was like, really? And in England, there's always ticketing problems. And but they were really puzzled, and it turned out two of the guys worked for the Indian Railway, and they were really, and they were looking at our tickets, and they were looking at, and there was lots of kind of chatting and talking, and I was quite relaxed about it, and the train was moving out and gathering speed. And then one of them said, what's your destination? What's your destination? And the whole kind of carriage went quiet. And I said, Calcutta. And no one moved. And then someone said, your destination's Calcutta? I said, yeah, Calcutta. And they said, this train is going to Delhi. No, I got it the wrong way around. I just spoiled the story. I meant to say, I'm going to Delhi. And they said, this train's going to Calcutta. I looked at Phil, and he said, Sai, he was actually flying out of Delhi. He said, Sai, this isn't going to work. We're going the wrong direction. We'll miss. And it turned out that the trains, we were on a train that went between Delhi and Calcutta, but the two trains did that, and they passed about 20 minutes apart in Gaya station, and we had happened to get on the first one that came that went in the wrong direction. So Phil said, "Si, we've got to get off because the other train. I mean, I've got to get my flight." And you know, I said, "Yeah, but yeah, I think we have. You're right." And they were, and the people next to us said, "No, you know, you can't get off. The train's moving." And we got up and we went and looked out the door, and sure enough, the train was moving, but you know, it was just gathering speed. And Phil said, "I think we'll have to jump off. We'll definitely have to jump off." And I said, "Really? Do you think it's?" He said, "Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's not going very fast." And I had a rucksack, and I also had a guitar in a case, and he had a rucksack. And he said, "Yeah, we'll throw the bags first, and then the guitar, and then we'll just jump out. And if it's too fast, just roll." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yeah, it's going to be fine." But all the time we were talking, the train was like gathering speed. So I was like, "Oh well, he said, yeah, I mean, this flight's going to go." And he was about to push his rucksack out, and suddenly these hands grabbed us from behind and said, "No, killing!" And they wouldn't. I mean, they were really holding us, really holding us. And Phil was saying, "No, I need to get my flight. I need to go." And he was trying to get free and push his bag out the door, and someone was grabbing his bag, and there were about 8 people holding us. And I was just kind of like, "Whoa, this is a kind of extraordinary." And then there was this huge screeching of brakes, and we all kind of, fell against the wall. And the train was slowing down really fast. And this guy turned and smiled and said, "I pulled the emergency cord to stop the train." And I looked up, and there, next to the emergency pull to stop the train, it says, penalty for improper use. I can't remember how many, 20,000 rupees and 6 months in jail. I was like, "Oh no!" my childhood terror of stopping a train for some like banal reason. So the trains like screeched to a halt, and then they said, "Okay, go." So Phil and I put on our rucksacks. I took my guitar. We got down the steps, went and ran back, which was something like, we'd gone like 2 miles, I think. And we got back onto the station, and about 10 minutes later, the train that we were meant to get on came. We got on the train. We found our seats. There were some people sitting in them. We sat next to them, smiling. The train began to leave, and then after about 10 minutes, the ticket conductor came, and he said, S4, 66 and 67. And we took it and gave him our tickets. And he looked at them, and he looked at us. And then he went cluck, cluck on the tickets, and he said, "I hope that your journey is uninterrupted." And then he left. So, yeah, in that story, I was really struck by the generosity of the people who stopped us jumping off this train. And the train took so long to slow down, I realized how fast it was going. And I think we would have been in trouble jumping out of it. Like, we definitely would have not been able to run at the speed it was going. And actually, a month or so later, I was on a train that was slowing down, and people were getting ready to get off it. And they waited until it was almost not moving, or it felt like it was almost not moving, and then jumped off and were running about as fast as they could run in order to stay standing up. And I realized, I was like, wow, the train we tried to get off was going a lot faster. So yeah, the generosity of those people, it was like a full-bodied generosity. It was holding. It was like, we're not going to let you do this thing, but generous. So we have conventional generosity or tangible generosity, and then there's also like mental or psychic generosity. And in a sense, that's more subtle, but equally or maybe more profound. So what is it to be generous with our minds? What is it to be generous with everything that comes? So as we were sitting, had the intention to allow the attention to settle with the breath. Wherever we find the mind, relaxing completely, allowing attention to settle with the breath. And how easy it is to be judgmental, to be harsh. Like, oh, I've been like daydreaming about whatever, Hawaii or something for a long time, and now I'm back. I'm no good. Like, what on earth's going on? I can never meditate. I'm never going to be any good at this. It's not so generous. Like seeing, what would it be to have a mind that we're aware that, oh, there's thoughts about Hawaii. Huh. And then, oh yeah, that's the nature of mind, is discursive thought. And there's a training practice right now about training attention to settle with the breath. Okay, here we go. Back to the breath. And there's a softness and a generosity to that way of engaging around this simple practice of breath, awareness of breath, again and again, watching the tendency to be harsh. And again, not even being so generous that we don't even banish the harshness. It's like, oh yeah, there's harshness, there's judgment. Oh, like being generous with that as well. There's first heard this quality through an American teacher called Ram Dass, and he said that someone said, what's changed in your practice? He'd been practicing for, I don't know, 20 years or something, doing pretty intense meditation practice. And he said, well, I think what's changed after 20 years of meditation is that, well, he said, I thought I was going to get rid of all my neuroses. That was one of my aims when I was started meditating, was I wanted to get rid of all my neuroses. And actually, that hasn't happened. Almost all the neuroses that I used to have, they still arise. But they're now, rather than these kind of wild monsters, they're like these little furry animals. And I invite them in for tea. They're just things that come, and I welcome them. And they're not so powerful. They're not such large, disturbing forces. And he said, something comes, and I just say, oh, hello, sexual perversity. Come on in for tea. And then it comes, and then it goes. And the coming in for tea isn't about enacting it or acting it out, but it's just like welcoming whatever comes. There's a famous Rumi poem, which I can't resist reading. It's The Guest House. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival. A joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still treat each guest honourably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whatever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. This being human is a guest house. Each morning a new arrival. You could say each moment a new arrival. So this quality of generosity of mind to welcome whatever comes. And if you remember the story, if you were around for Yaz a few weeks ago, the teacher, female teacher, Zen master, whose instruction was that whatever comes, say thank you very much, I have no complaints whatsoever. In a sense, an encouragement to be generous, but also a way of seeing how often I have complaints, how often I'm not fully welcoming, not fully generous to what's coming. So throughout this week, as we explore generosity, an encouragement not just to explore it in the terms of giving and receiving, but also intangible giving and receiving, but also to really pay attention to how generosity is with thoughts that arise, with emotions that arise. Like what is it to be really generous with whatever comes to the mind? All the neuroses, all the hopes, all the fears, all the concerns, all the judgments, all the joy. Think whatever it is, can we welcome it fully? Last week I talked about the story of the Buddha giving, the historical Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, giving a teaching up on Vulture Peak in northern India. And the story was there are thousands of people. And he sits on his seat and then picks up a flower, which I guess I could pick up a flower. And Mahakassapa, one of his disciples, smiles in the audience. Buddha holding up a flower, Mahakassapa smiles. And the story is he kind of gets it. And the Buddha puts down the flower, gets down off his seat, and that's the end of the teaching. So what is this? What is this generosity? What is this? What's being offered here? What's been offered freely and received freely? That Mahakassapa smiles, and the story goes he wakes up. I mean, what's he seeing? What's the state of mind? What's the state of being that allows him to receive this flower being held up? And he smiles. And what's this historical figure called the Buddha doing, holding up a flower? Is that generous? I mean, what's going on there? One of the practices that I really love in Zen is it's non-discriminating awareness. And when I first heard that, I was like, non-discriminating awareness? That's a little strange. Like, discrimination actually is, it's kind of good. Like, that was a good teaching, that was a bad teaching. This is heavy, that's light. Like, discrimination, what's so great about a non-discriminating awareness? And Suzuki Roshi's teachings are that it's not the non-discriminating mind. It's not that it doesn't discriminate, but it treats everything the same way. Whether something is valuable or not valuable, to treat it with the same care. Whether something's good or bad, to treat it with the same care. Whether something's painful or pleasurable, to bring the same degree of attentiveness to the experience. Whether you know someone well or you don't know someone well, like meeting them with the same curiosity and fullness. And there's a piece of Zen that encourages us that whatever we pick up, whatever we engage with, to hold it in the same way, whether something's light or heavy. Is a teacup. Whether something's light or heavy, to hold it in the same way, to pick it up in the same way. Whether something's valuable or non-valuable, treating it in the same way, with the same care, with the same respect, with the same attention. And I find that a really beautiful practice, just in my daily life, to pick something up, to engage with something with, like, whether it's a cheap pencil or a beautiful, a beautiful pen, whether it's some like cheap food, I guess they're like a cheap cookie, or whether it's some like gourmet treat, some gourmet dessert, like to be attentive to it in the same way, with the same quality. This generosity of, and whatever comes in the mind, pleasure, pain, judgment, equanimity, it's whatever comes, the same quality of generosity and attentiveness. And then, I mean, one description for that could be everything is holy, everything is special, everything is worthy of attention. So this generosity thing, it's the second of our pause, and then care, love. To take care of something, to love something, to love and care. Generosity is like one of the key aspects of, one of the key expressions, but also one of the key aspects of love and care. So, this week I encourage you to explore generosity, and in the practice, choose a practice to first of all, continue and recommit to whatever your daily practice that you assigned yourself, whatever that is, whether it was 5 minutes every day or 10 minutes every day. And if that feels something that was relatively straightforward, then feel free to just add a little more time, move from 5 minutes to 10 minutes or 10 minutes to 15. If it felt about right, keep it the same. If it felt too long, maybe bring it down so it feels more manageable. And again, being cautious of, like, what's that motivation behind? Are we wanting to increase it to become a better person, to impress the people in the group? What's in the pod? What's going on? And bringing a generosity to our sitting as we sit, bringing an attentiveness and a diligence to it with the awareness of breath meditation, but also bringing a softness, bringing a generosity to whatever comes. Maybe it's resistance to sitting, maybe it's a delight in it, maybe it's, whatever comes. I was just thinking, pausing now, just pausing and checking in with what's present. What's the spirit of generosity present right now? Are you feeling its presence or its absence? So during this week, I'm going to suggest that you engage in 2 acts of kindness or generosity each day. 2 acts of generosity each day. And I suggest that one of them is towards someone that you don't know. So 2 acts of generosity, and one of them is towards someone that you don't know. And these acts are going to be tangible. They're going to be things that you can do in the world. So they're going to be visible, and people are going to receive whatever it is, or have the opportunity to receive. I mean, who knows how it's going to be received, but have the opportunity to receive. So 2 acts of generosity, and one with someone who you don't know. So like a kind of random act of generosity. And they could be secret or they could be explicit. And the other area is the mental generosity, just being really attentive to judgment, to harshness, to criticism, and seeing if we can bring a softness and a generosity. And what I suggest is that you remind each other about that. So 2 of you are already in a pair. I suggest the others of you who haven't already formed either a pair or a threesome form a pair. And I suggest that the way to remind each other is text message. If you just text each other at random times the word generosity, and see, so that means you need to share phone numbers if you're comfortable doing that, and encourage each other. Just when it comes to mind, just text generosity and send it to either your partner or your 2 partners, and remind each other just to be awake to generosity in life. So now, or soon, I'm going to sign off from this little video, and I'm going to suggest that you sign in to the Google Hangout, and I'll send out an email of instructions about what I'm going to suggest that you do together on that Hangout. But yeah, I'll send it out in an email what the instructions are. And as you watch this, I'm going to be sitting in or starting the first day of a silent retreat, which is a 7-day silent meditation and concentration and absorption practice, which right now I'm really intrigued and curious about and excited about. So, yeah, generosity. Oh, there's one other piece that I wanted to bring up, and that is, I request that before our next pod, which is going to be on Wednesday evening next week, I suggest that you all make a 2-minute, or between a 2-minute minimum, 5-minute maximum, video of yourself. So sit in front of your computer or your iPhone and talk about your experience exploring generosity this week. And if you could then upload those onto YouTube, you could make them private if you want. That would be really great. And I imagine that there may be some resistance to doing that, so just check in to the resistance, be curious about it, and give it a go. See what it's like to be talking into a camera about your experience around generosity. And they're not going to be distributed, they're not going to be used without your permission, or they're not going to be used. And yeah, I'd be really intrigued to hear about how it's gone, how it's going. So if you could do that by next Tuesday, that would be great. And I'll put a reminder in the email as well. So yeah, generosity can be cultivated, be brought to mind. We can remind each other, we can remind ourselves, remember that great, remember not to forget. So it can be a conscious kind of cultivating of generosity. And then also, one of the qualities of an awakened mind is generosity. And that's basically seeing the basically softening in the belief of separation. And as the belief in separation between me and everything else begins to soften, there's a natural upwelling, or there's a innate upwelling of generosity. Shantideva, the great Indian sage, said, why would I not help? It's just like when one hand hurts, the other hand comes to soothe it. Like when someone else is hurting, of course I go to help. So generosity is something we can cultivate, and it's also an expression of clarity, of awakening. So as we move through the week, being really curious about generosity, when it just wells up in us and we engage in the world from a place of being generous, and when it's absent, when we're feeling stingy, miserly, wanting to hoard things, feeling there's not enough. And again, not being really awake to the judgment around this. Bringing generosity even to the judge. So, I wish you well this week. I wish you well engaging with your partners and stimulating them to remember generosity. And I wish you well on each day with your 2 acts of generosity, one to someone that you don't know. So, thank you for your attentiveness, and I'll remember you're going to go onto Google Hangout right now, and I'm going to see you next week. So I wish you well. Thank you.